The school board work session begins in 2 minutes. Please take your seats. Again, the school board work session begins in 2 minutes. The school board work session begins in 1 minute. Please take your seats. Again, the school board work session begins in 1 minute.
Good morning. I now call the February 19th, 2026 Administrative Briefing and Work Session of the Marion County School Board to order at 9 a.m. Please silence your electronic devices to avoid disturbing others. Mirroring and modeling how our students begin each day, I ask that you please pause for a moment of silence. Please join me. I will now read our board commitment statement. We are the Marion County School District Leadership Team. When we come together to work, we are efficient, effective, and productive. Our three most important characteristics are dedicated, transparent, and individually responsible. To work well together, we must demonstrate respect, confront reality, and be accountable. We will always put students first, and we will leave a legacy of success. I would like to ask the school board attorney to explain the rules for the public workshop. Good morning, Attorney Powers.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and thank you. This work session is a public meeting as defined in Florida's Sunshine Law. The board is dedicated to full transparency in its meetings and its work. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board has adopted uniform meeting procedures, including the right for citizens to participate. The board will allow public comment regarding any work session item listed on today's agenda at the appropriate time. Speakers must fill out a request form located in the lobby and hand it to the board clerk. After the board and superintendent have completed their discussion on a particular agenda item, the board clerk will call the speaker's name in the order received. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. As required by Sunshine Law, the board must maintain orderly conduct and proper decorum throughout this meeting. Speakers may criticize subject matter and decisions in a respectful manner, but not people. Finally, speakers must be very careful not to violate the privacy rights of others, especially students and their family members, by mentioning their names or other identifying information. Thank you for your attention to these important rules.
Thank you, Attorney Powers. Ms. Martinez-Young, can you please provide the proof of publication for today's workshop?
The notice for the February 19th, 2026 work session was placed on the district website on Thursday, February 12th, 2026.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez-Young. I welcome Dr. Brewer for her administrative briefing.
Good morning, thank you. I want to recognize just a few events that have taken place, and I'm sure you all are going to say this in your board comments because it was such a great event. But last week, we were able to travel to Tallahassee for Marion at the Capitol. And it was inspiring. We were able to hear from close to 100 Shady Hill students sing. And they even personally recognized our Commissioner of Education and sang a thank you song to him. So it was special, and I'm sure it's something that they will remember for a long time. We also heard from Ms. Hendry. She gave an inspiring message to all in attendance, and as we've already shared, she was selected as Marion County's Teacher of the Year the week before at our wonderful Golden Apple Gala. So it was a great event, and thank you all for being there and being so supportive. Yesterday, we were also able to highlight 65 Fordham kindergartners at the CEP's networking breakfast. And it was a special day for them. Some of those students have never been on a school bus, and our Marion Technical College bus was able to transport the Fordham early learners, which is really just a neat pipeline to show the kindergartners being transported by our Marion Technical College bus. So that was great, and they could not have been more precious. So thank you to everyone that made that happen. And our Vanguard High School's JROTC was able to present the colors. Today we have two important agenda items for you. Mr. Xavier Ballariti will do the welcoming when it's time in place of Ms. Usher. She is presenting today in Tallahassee. That's it, Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Well, we will begin with the interlocal agreement for 80th Avenue. And we have our facility staff here to give us some guidance as well as some county staff. So welcome everyone to the meeting.
Good morning, School Board Chair Dr. James, school board members, and Dr. Brewer. Xavier Ballariti, Planning Manager for Marion County Public Schools. It's a pleasure to be here today at this work session. I'd like to introduce our team from the Marion County Office of the County Engineer, who are here today to present on upcoming improvements near Westport High School. They will provide an overview of the project, including proposed roadway widening, roundabout improvements at key intersections, traffic control during construction, and the installation of a preemptive traffic signal to support school operations at Westport. Just as a reminder to the board, the proposed interlocal agreement tied to this item provides for the conveyance of approximately 1.76 acres of right-of-way and easement land in exchange for the design and construction of the preemptive traffic signal. It also includes about 5 acres of a temporary construction easement, which is just temporary. On behalf of Ms. Usher and myself, I want to share that it has been a pleasure working with our county engineers. They have generously volunteered their time to assist us on several of our projects, and they are here today to provide information and answer any questions the school board may have. With that, I'll let Stephen Cahoon, County Engineer, and Dr. Don Watson, Transportation Engineer, begin their presentation.
Thank you very much.
Give me just a second to get the clicker. Here's your clicker.
Welcome to the podium. We look forward to hearing from you all.
Good morning. Thank you for having us, and I'm going to go over our Southwest 80th Avenue widening project that we've been working on for quite some time now, and we're getting excited that we're getting to the point where we can release at least part of it for construction, and we'll discuss some of those improvements specifically that impact the high school. So just to give you a brief kind of history and current status of where we are with our project, this is called Southwest 80th Avenue Segment 1. So it goes through property that's owned by On Top of the World and also the new Colessa Township development, and it goes all the way up to where Westport High School is. So it's called Segment 1, but because of how long and extensive it is, we've broken it up into 2 different phases. So the south phase is called Phase 1A, We are currently wrapping up right-of-way and just finalized some agreements with On Top of the World and some other community development districts in that area. And we are planning to go to construction on that south phase that you can see in red fairly shortly. The Phase 1B is the one that impacts the high school. That design is wrapping up right now. It's expected to be completed later this month or early March. And we are still continuing with right-of-way negotiations and appraisals for some of the other private individuals that are impacted by that section of roadway, the Phase 1B section. The preliminary engineering report was completed in 2021, and so you can see this is a project that the county's been diligently working on over the last 5 years, and we're now getting kind of to the finish line.
And I'm just going to pause you real quick. Mr. Christian, can you confirm the PowerPoint's being streamed on YouTube?
It's, the feed down here is not.
I just want to make sure it's on YouTube. I don't need to see it.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure the people watching on YouTube would be able to see it. Okay, you can continue.
So for Southwest 80th Avenue, this is the typical section that you see here. On the left side of this typical section, that would be the west side of the road. We have a 12-foot shared use path that would be for pedestrians and bicycles. So as you go on Southwest 80th Avenue to the north up by Westport High School, the right side would be where the high school would be, and on that side you would have a 5-foot sidewalk. And in both directions you have 12-foot travel lanes and a 4-foot bike lane. Our project will also include a short section of improvements along Southwest 38th Street, which will also go along the frontage of Westport High School. So this project will pretty much extend just east of the high school. We have another project called Southwest 38th Street, which will continue widening 38th further to the east to 60th Avenue and beyond to Fore Ranch. But we wanted to make sure that we minimize impacts to the school, so we knew we were going to be constructing along the school with our 80th Avenue project, so we added this section of 38th Street as well, just to try to get all that work done at the same time to minimize disruptions. So on this section, if you look the north side of the road, which is the left side of your screen, that's where the shared use path is. So the school is on the north side of the road, so the 12-foot shared use path would be going along the school for 38th Street. And on the south side, that goes along the Calessa development, there would be a 5-foot sidewalk. And again, we have 12-foot travel lanes in each direction. Now, when it comes to the intersections, where Southwest 80th Avenue and Southwest 38th Street intersect, we looked at two different alternatives here. We looked at a traditional traffic signal, which is what's out there now, and then we looked at a roundabout. And what we looked at was not just operations and like the amount of time that people would be sitting at the intersection, but also research that's been done on safety and specifically fatal and serious injury crashes, and how a signal versus a roundabout would perform long-term from a safety perspective. And based on that, what we determined was, from an operational perspective, there wasn't a large difference. The signal performed slightly better from an operational perspective, but the roundabout had such a better performance from a safety perspective. When you look at a signal versus a roundabout, in general, roundabouts reduce fatal and serious injury crashes by about like 78%. So we really want to drive down those fatal and serious injury crashes because those have such a disruption to communities and individuals and families. So by slowing people down through these roundabouts, we can really try to avoid high-speed collisions that signals aren't able to always eliminate. So that was our final recommendation at this intersection, was to put in a roundabout. And at the crosswalks, you'll see there's pedestrian warning signs, and we're also installing these rectangular beacons that when you push the button on the sign, the beacon starts to rapidly flash back and forth to alert drivers that someone's about to enter the crosswalk. So those have been shown, especially at roundabouts, to be effective at improving drivers' yielding behavior to pedestrians. We did a similar analysis at the current driveway to Westport. We looked at both a traffic signal and a roundabout at this location. And here, from the operational perspective, the signal and roundabout were pretty much neck and neck. There was only a 1 second difference between how long an average individual would have to wait. So that was a clear indication to us that because of the large safety benefits of a roundabout, we should move forward with that alternative at the high school as well. And similar here, there's the pedestrian signs with the rapid flashing beacons for individuals that are crossing the roadway. When we get to the north side of the high school, this is back on 80th Avenue, after discussions with staff with the school, we decided that the county would agree to install a preemptive traffic signal at the northern driveway that the buses use during school release. So this signal during school release would allow the buses to get a green light and stop traffic on 80th Avenue so they could safely turn out onto 80th and continue south or continue north. During other times of the day, like not at school release times, it would just be flashing yellow on 80th and flashing red for drivers exiting the school. And the agreement specifies the county would pay for the construction of this with its project, and the county would maintain the signal per stipulations that are outlined in a maintenance agreement that goes with it. In terms of the right-of-way and easements that Xavier had overviewed in his introduction, this is kind of a page that summarizes some of the impacts on 80th Avenue. So the cross-hatched area that's on the bottom of that screenshot is a temporary construction easement. That easement area extends over an existing drainage pond that is on the school property. And what the easement will allow us to do is to go into that pond and change some of the slopes of the pond that are being impacted by our roadway project, where you can see just above that, there's just a slashed kind of hatching. That's where we're acquiring additional right-of-way from the school for the additional lanes. And because of that additional lane coming into the school property, we have to adjust the pond as well. So this is where the majority of the impacts to the school are, is at this intersection just north of 80th and 38th Street where the pond is. Once you get north of the pond, you can see the road kind of curves back and it's more on the west side. So there's really only impacts from a temporary construction easement standpoint. This is the only real area where we're taking right away from the school on 80th Avenue. Staying on 80th Avenue, there are some impacts or changes to the school driveway that's on the south side. So you can see there's the Southwest 34th Place is just north of that driveway, where we're having to maintain access and a left turn lane into that driveway. That exists today and we're maintaining that. And then we're also maintaining the left-in access. If you're coming from the north entering the school, you can make the southbound left turn into the school. The main difference between what's existing today and what's going to happen after construction is people exiting the school will no longer be allowed to turn left out. They will have to turn right and then make a U-turn at that 34th Place intersection. And the main reason for that is when people are having to cross multiple lanes of traffic after we widen it, there's more conflict points. We're trying to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes, and this driveway is also closer to the 38th Street roundabout than we would typically allow for a full access. So between how the spacing between the driveway being too close to the roundabout and also trying to avoid conflicts that could create crashes, we found that having the right turn and U-turn movement one after another is generally safer than trying to make a left turn across multiple lanes of traffic. Going to Southwest 38th Street, this shows the right-of-way impacts on the north side of 38th Street where the school driveway and the roundabout are proposed. You can see that there is some property acquisition occurring because we're realigning the driveway a little bit so that it fits in with the proposed roundabout. We were trying to avoid impacts to the school property, so we shifted the roundabout to the east, and that made it so that we had to also realign the driveway to the east a little bit as well. We wanted to avoid impacting the athletic baseball field. So in this case, we are acquiring some property to be able to maintain the roundabout approach, the signing and striping and markings as you approach the roundabout exiting the high school. And there is some amount of temporary construction easement to install a new gate and fencing, which I'll show in the next slide. So this is like a closer up picture of what it looks like. So to the right of your screen is going north into the school. We have a little bulb out for people that can make a U-turn if the gate's closed and they can't get into the school. That will allow them to turn around. And we're taking the existing fencing out and we're putting new fencing along the new property line that will connect to new double swing gates that will be on both sides of the new raised median that goes into the school. So this is a summary of the impacts that I just outlined. From a right-of-way perspective, it was around 1.44 acres. There's a 0.32 acre drainage easement to maintain some of the infrastructure within that pond area that's being impacted. Temporary construction easements, which this is just during construction and will expire once our project is done, is close to 5 acres. We'll construct the new preemptive traffic signal on 80th Avenue at the north driveway for the buses that are exiting. The south driveway on 80th Avenue will continue to allow the southbound left turns into the school, but drivers exiting the school who want to go south will not be allowed to make that direct left turn. They'll have to make a U-turn instead. And then on 38th Street, we have some revisions to the driveway and a new roundabout. So as we get into construction, here are our current estimates. These are subject to change as construction progresses and the contractor's work priorities may change as things come up. The bid was already awarded back in November of last year, and we're using the same contractor for both the south phase, phase 1A, and the north phase, phase 1B. That's CW Roberts. Notice to proceed for phase 1A, the south phase by On Top of the World. That's scheduled for early March of this year. Phase 1B, our current estimate is a few months after that in the summer of this year. So based on those notice to proceed dates, we have some estimated times of when roadway widening and roundabout construction and the signal, the preemptive signal would start near the high school. So for the signal, we're expecting work to start early next year and hopefully end in the summer. For both roundabouts at 80th Avenue and the high school driveway, we're hoping that construction will be wrapped up by the end of the summer as well. So as construction gets underway, our design consultant prepared some concept plans for traffic control, and both for 80th Avenue and 38th Street, we wanted to be cognizant of impacts to the school and the residents in the area. So in both in all phases of construction, we're going to ensure that 2 lanes of traffic remain open, 1 lane in each direction. There won't be any lane closures per se. It'll just be shifting traffic from one side of the road to the other as construction progresses. They'll build temporary pavement and shift traffic to the temporary pavement as they're constructing the roundabouts in the area and constructing the new lanes for the 4-lane facility. At 38th Street specifically, we'll ensure that they continue to maintain access to the school, that driveway will remain, and they'll build any temporary asphalt pavement that they need to ensure that access remains for drivers entering and exiting the school as well. They might have to extend it a little further south if they shift the travel lanes to the south, but we'll make sure our inspectors and construction managers are keeping the contractors up to speed and making sure that they keep the travel lanes open for everyone. So that's the end of my presentation. If you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you so much. And I know I have a few questions. I don't mind getting started if that's okay. And these are not necessarily questions for you, one of them is, but currently we don't have a lot of walkers that come to Westport because there's no way for walkers to come to Westport. So I'm happy to hear that essentially from Colessa north, there'll be now a sidewalk.
Correct. On the east side of the road for 80th Avenue, there will be a continuous 5-foot sidewalk.
Okay, because at this point right now, people who live in Colessa are not walking to school to Westport and there's obviously a few smaller single-family homes before you get to Colessa headed south, but the major population of students we would receive would come from that neighborhood, and there is no current way for them to walk to school. So this would create an opportunity for students to ride or bike to school, which I think is wonderful. We've had a variety of conversations as a community about the necessity for sidewalks, so it certainly makes me happy to see safer ways for kids to walk and ride their bikes to school, absolutely. So, because is there currently a crosswalk at that 38th and 80th intersection? There's not, right? No, because there's no sidewalk.
There's no signalized crosswalk.
Correct.
With that signal.
Okay, I didn't think so. It just triggered me to remember, there's lots of crosswalks now in the roundabout, which will be a new concept for that area because there's not currently any crosswalks in that area. On slide 9, you talked about the traffic having to turn right, leaving the main entrance of Westport. From a staff perspective, quick question. The car line does not operate out of there, or it does? The main entrance?
Car line does. Car line comes into the front office.
That's what I thought. So if the car line is out of the front, concern I have would be for the length. Have you guys done a study on how many people turn left currently coming out of the main entrance? That's the question I have for the county engineers. And then understanding if all of those people who turn left will now turn right and then immediately get in that left-hand turn lane for 34th or whatever that road is that turn lane long enough to accept all of those cars without creating opportunities for people to get rear-ended because they're sitting in traffic?
So I can comment on the first part, Dr. James. So we do currently operate dual parent car lines at Westport. So we operate one off of 38th that goes by the Performing Arts Center, which is the main car loop. And then we offer a secondary relief car loop in the front office because there's 3,000 kids at the campus. Starting next year, our projection is about 2,100 kids when we open South Marion, so we would not need to operate that front car loop anymore. We did not for many years. We only operated the one off of 38th for all parents at Westport and can go back to doing that so it minimizes the traffic having to leave the school out onto 80th.
Okay, so that's good to know. So then basically the only people leaving the main entrance are staff.
Would be staff, yes, and we talked to Ms. Cruz about looking at some alternative parking locations for staff that we could even minimize the number of staff that would have to exit out of there at the end of the day.
Okay, that was my only concern, is a bottleneck in that left-hand U-turn lane, so that was my only concern. So those are the only questions I have. Board, I open it up to the rest of you. Dr. Campbell.
So my concern was very similar, and I was gonna ask Xavier or staff to see if I have an aerial pulled up of the campus, if we were considering any internal change to traffic pattern as far as actually extending a portion of roadway across right now, which is green space, from the main entrance kind of roundabout that they have within the main entrance over to the other parking lot.
We would not be able to do that. There are probably a couple of reasons, but the main reason is we use that for practice fields right now because we don't want our teams practicing on the main athletic fields to limit the impact to the turf itself. And so we utilize all that entire green space between the band, the football teams, soccer teams, all of them.
Okay, because that was the other, I'm grateful to hear that we're not gonna have staff as much, potentially even parking in that area, and that the car line, because anytime any one of us goes out there, I can assure you there's probably about 9.5 times out of 10 I've turned left coming out of there. So that's gonna be a transition for visitors for sure. But if we can minimize it to the folks that are there traditionally every day.
Yes, and we're also going to have to change the way that we handle our visitors for athletic events because typically we park our visitor buses up on that side to separate them from the general traffic, but we won't be able to utilize that anymore, so we'll have to park visiting buses behind Building 5, which is the two-story building on the east side of campus.
Okay. Okay, my thought was gonna be actually that we would do an internal additional roadway, but I understand why we need that green space because there isn't as much green space on that campus for it to be as large as it is, as you would think that there could be. So my other question that I had is actually about the temporary construction easement. I can see it looks like that you're not going to be impacting the softball field at all, but I just wanted confirmation of that because you are taking the portion directly behind the outfield of the softball field, and so I was just wanting to make sure that, and I know that on the 38th side, it's the baseball field we're worried about. Well, on the actual temporary easement on 80th, it's the softball field. So I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, so that temporary construction easement, we're not acquiring any property. That's just for the contractor to have room to do their work within the right-of-way. So if there's any impacts to the fence, they would be responsible for arranging to repair. But I believe that the temporary construction easement is set up such that there shouldn't be any impacts to the athletic field.
Okay. That was the main question that I had, and after looking at this presentation before you came today, I already am calling the class of 2027 the traffic class. Just in my mind, this, you know, at the class from North Marion High was the plywood class or whenever they didn't have windows on their, and so the class of 2027 at Westport is just going to have to understand it's going to be the most unique year that you could ever have in that school's history.
Well, and thankfully, this is timed after our rezone, which is going to alleviate a lot of issues because doing this with 900 more students on that campus would make it exponentially more challenging. So that is, I would say, the silver lining for sure. Reverend Cummings, did you have any comments? Okay. Board Member Conrad.
Just very quickly, I just wanted to say thank you for your partnership in this. Anytime you go out to Westport, whether there's construction or not, it's a challenge to get around on the road out there. And so previously, last week, I visited with Xavier and Ms. Usher, and they were just so grateful for your partnership. You're listening to our concerns and our needs and helping us with the flow of traffic, you know, at that high school. So we're just very grateful and thank you for coming to the table and helping us solve some problems.
Yeah, thank you.
And on that note, can I just say thank you for widening 38th. Thank you for widening 38th. That's, I always knew the 80th project was certainly a part. I mean, that's been a conversation with the Colon family and On Top of the World for a really long time, but thank you for widening 38th. I'll just leave it at that.
All right, board, is there any further discussion on this item? Mr. Whitehouse, I see you coming forward.
Thank you. I just want to make sure we update you on the communication plan as well for this. So we have talked with Ms. Cruz and the county engineers. We are planning in the fall that we will host a parent night for parents to come in, and the county has agreed to come out and share the same presentation. We chose to wait until the fall, one, because we know we're rezoning, so there's going to be a different group of students at the school in the fall, but also understanding that parents don't really see the reality of it until they start seeing the construction itself. And so we will provide parent information in the fall so they understand what this is going to look like. And then we have a plan for also educating our students on how to actually navigate roundabouts, as that will, unless they live in 4-inch, possibly be a new tool for them that they'll have to learn. But really the way the county is going, we're going to have to start teaching in all of our driver's ed programs across the county.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Whitehouse. Board, was there any further discussion? All right, well, gentlemen, I wanted to thank you for your time and effort given to present this to the board and effectively communicate this message to our community. It certainly will have a lot of impact on the Southwest, and so we're grateful for the partnership and your willingness to be a part of the conversation.
Thank you again. We look forward to continuing our coordination.
Absolutely. All right, well, that concludes item 4.1. Is there any public comment on item 4.1? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item 5.1, which is the Attendance Boundary Committee. Mr. Whitehouse is here to give us an update, board, ahead of the community meetings happening on the north end, which start next week.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Board, again, welcome. Good morning. I just wanted to come back and talk a little bit more about where we ended up with our last conversation about rezoning the north end. We know from that conversation we had consensus from the board to move forward with those community conversations with the rezoning proposal. But one of the key pieces we want to make sure we get consensus on that will help us with that communication strategy with the North End schools is the proposal for the combination of SPAR and Anthony. And so I'm going to come back to this morning just to be able to share again some information about that with the hopeful outcome that we can get consensus on at least the proposal to combine them and the timeline of when that combination could occur. And certainly we can talk through at a later point greater details about what that combination could look like in greater detail, but I do have some updates just to share with some of our proposal ideas. So again, as a reminder, at the prior work session, we did update you on the boundary proposals that were the recommendations of our Attendance Boundary Advisory Committee, which would include rezoning 4 of our North End schools. We understand that with that rezoning, it leaves SPAR well under capacity, and that, as we mentioned before, was intentional because it fits with the ABAC's other recommendation, which was to combine SPAR and Anthony together to create one larger, more efficient school on the North End. And so I just want to provide just some basic information what that would look like. So our proposal is to combine SPAR and Anthony Elementary into a single school with the construction of that combination starting in the year 2028, just to give you a timeline perspective. Our recommendation is to build a new elementary school on the SPAR school site, keep the SPAR students on site during construction, which we have the largest piece of property at SPAR, which is why we could build on the property while school is in session. At the end of that construction, we would then need to rezone the North End schools again because we would be reducing the number of schools by 1. And then that would also afford us the opportunity, once the construction is complete, to move Fiddlers over to SPAR to Building 8, which is the newest building on the SPAR campus and does allow for enough square footage for us to house Fiddlers on site at SPAR and no longer need the actual Fiddlers location we have now north of Reddick. So here's just some basic information about those 2 schools, just so you can see what we're looking at with each campus. So we have almost double the acreage at SPAR that we do at Anthony Elementary School, which allows us that space to be able to construct on campus. You can see the school operating costs are fairly comparable between those schools right now. The big thing to note is the maintenance costs over the next 5 years. If we do not do anything else, we know that we're going to be expending about $6 million at Anthony just in general maintenance needs for some of our older buildings. SPAR is the same, especially in Building 1. We have a really big need to replace the plumbing in Building 1, which was built in 1964, and so that is several $1 million worth of plumbing that needs to be done sooner rather than later. You'll see listed on here, these are all the buildings that are available at each site and the age of each of those buildings. And so you can see how long it's been since we built anything new at either one of those sites. So this gives you a quick funding timeline of how we believe we can afford this using the sales tax dollars. So in 26-27, on the last approval we had from the board, we did have an earmark for almost $4 million to conduct a site survey for the new Denellen Combination School. The board gave us direction in the fall that they would prefer we not use sales tax dollars, that we do that on our own instead of hiring a company to do that site survey. So we are certainly moving forward with that expectation, which then frees up that $3.8 million that we can put towards another project using the sales tax funding. We are also in our redesign of Bellevue Santos and Bellevue Elementary combination, because we have some newer buildings there that we would not want to tear down because they're new. We have shrunken the size of the new building and incorporated the existing buildings that we want to keep. And so by doing that, we have saved about $13 million in sales tax funding of what we initially thought we were going to spend on that combination school. So that can also be put towards the new project for Spar Anthony. And then if we push back the Denellen Middle, Denellen High rebuild by 1 school year, that would allow us to recoup that $38 million in sales tax funding for that 1 year. And that would give us a total of $55 million that we could put towards the construction of the new Spar Anthony, and would only delay the Denellen project by 1 school year. So this we shared previously in the fall. This was our original prototype design. Certainly we would work on resizing this as we start to look at how we would incorporate some of the existing buildings at Spar as well. But this just kind of shows you how much of the property exists behind the existing campus that we could build a school behind it, and then at the end of it, reroute the parent loop through some of the existing property that we have up front where our older buildings exist now. The cost for that at the time was about $45 million. Certainly if we do some scaling back, we can save a few dollars on that new school cost as well. We also looked at an alternative of if we were to simply add some additional building space. I know that was some conversation at the prior work session of just simply redoing some of the work in the media center, which needs to be expanded. We would have to add a classroom wing to be able to accommodate enough students at that campus. So the classroom wing would cost us about $18 million to build on the back end of the property. The cafeteria is not large enough to handle a school of almost 700 students, so we would have to build a new cafeteria. That cost is about $6 billion. The media center would need to be expanded and renovated, which is to tune about $2 million. We'd have to do some demo and site work at the property as well, which is roughly $2 million. And then we have to factor in what I showed before, that $3.5 million worth of repairs to some of the old buildings, especially Building 1, that would need to be done. So the total cost of doing just some additional buildings and keeping all of the existing property at Spar would be about $31.5 million. So you have a difference of about $13.5 million, give or take, between the proposal of a brand new school versus doing some addition to the campus, which the addition still leaves us with buildings that were built in the 1960s that will require ongoing maintenance for years out.
Mr. Whitehouse, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
We're comparing 55 million to 31.5. Isn't 13 million difference? That's 23 million difference.
No.
I'm sorry, I want to make sure I'm
you're
clear on that.
fine. The $55 million is how much we can put aside in sales tax funding by the year 2028.
Got it. I'm just trying to make sure I understand all the different.
The prototype, what we built right now is at Winding Oaks and Ross Prairie is about $45 million.
Okay.
If we scale that back, we could certainly do it for less. If we keep building 7 and 8, which are the newest buildings at Spar, and integrate those into a new campus design, we would essentially add new cafeteria, new media center, new admin suite, new classroom buildings, all of those within that new design, and incorporate some of the existing buildings that we would still use on the property. So about $45 million for that, which again leaves us some sales tax money left over, which would then get us that head start already on the Denellen project. So again, our recommendation, combining those two schools on the Spar site, we can begin in 2028 with a proposed opening date of August of 2029. We would be able to keep SPAR students on site during construction, which prevents us from having to move portables around the district, which, just as a reminder, portables to move and install are about $100,000 per portable. We would then, at the end of construction, be able to move fiddlers over to Building 8 at SPAR, which is the newest building, and would accommodate them. We have talked with facilities, and they do believe that we can do a little bit of patchwork on the roof at fiddlers that would hold over until 2028. Obviously, we wouldn't be able to go on forever without a new roof, but we could make it last for a couple more years until we could get fiddlers moved over to the SPAR site, which then frees up that property for the board to either sell, demolish, whatever you would like to do with the existing fiddlers property. So our annual savings and operational expense by combining those schools is about $1.3 million. The savings comes from, one, combining a lot of duplicated staff, like principals, secretaries, things that we have duplicated between two school campuses. It also takes into account reduction in square footage, which is a reduction in the number of custodial staff needed, maintenance staff needed, also reduction in electrical and heating expenses, et cetera. So it'd be about $1.3 million in operational expenses. It would also save us about $10 million in needed repair costs between those two sites if we were to move forward with the new campus and remove some of those older buildings that we have at the SPAR site. And then that leaves the board the opportunity to decide what they would like to do with the Anthony campus. Could be repurposed, could be sold, could be land banked, and just keep the property for the future. All right.
All right, thank you, Mr. Whitehouse. Dr. Brewer, did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay, so I will open it up for the board for discussion. I think one of the things, if I don't mind starting, one just quick clarifying question I have, because maybe the whole board is not really aware of the severity of the plumbing situation in Building 1 at SPAR. And so my question, because one of my concerns in essentially a 3-year delay, and so if we rezone now for the 26-27 school year, we wouldn't combine for 3 years because of the construction timeline.
Right.
And funding, because obviously we're doing this pay as we go.
Right.
So my concern is, how do we avoid the Schools of Hope dilemma coming to SPAR? Is there a possibility that we can look into condemning Building 1 at SPAR and having the conversations around the plumbing, assuming we're unwilling to address the plumbing issues? Yeah. I would feel more confident. I know that Dr. Alday is interested in trying to move out of Building 1 if possible. If her school does get rezoned and the student population diminishes into the 200s, which is what the presented plan for rezoning is, if it's possible for her to do that and operate out of Building 8 and some of those other buildings, I would like to understand the probability of condemning Building 1 and then taking it offline from a fish perspective, so that we're not putting ourselves in a compromised position for Schools of Hope with it just sitting idly for 3 years. Not that it's an ideal place for anyone to go, because obviously if we're not operating in it, because the flushers don't flush, I don't think it's going to be that ideal for someone else. But I would love to just be able to really feel very confident about that. So as a further, before we get to rulemaking and development workshop in April, that's something I would like to know from a board perspective is how can we readdress the fish report? Seeing as we wouldn't move Fiddlers over, the way I understand it, Fiddlers would stay where it is until we built something new on the north end. And so the idea previously was Fiddlers would go take Building 8. But if that's not going to happen and Dr. Alday is going to move and really maximize Building 8 and some other buildings, then I just want to understand how we can potentially offline some of those buildings that are not working.
Yes, so a couple of things. So yes, in conversation with Dr. Alday yesterday, if with the reduced population potentially for next year, she would like to not utilize any of the classrooms in Building 1 because of the plumbing issues. And she would have plenty of space in the other existing buildings that she could operate all the classrooms that she would need with that student population, which minimizes student use of any of those restroom facilities, obviously. The challenge, I think, would be we would still need to use it for the admin suite and the staff access, our single point of entry for security purposes is built through Building 1, so it would be challenging to redo that. We will certainly research into the School of Hope question, and Mr. Ayers, who's hanging out in the back, might have heard a little bit more, but I believe if we have a plan in place for a new school construction, which includes the demolition of Building 1, that's already set in motion by the board, that if anyone attempts to come in and use that building, we can deny that School of Hope. Because we already have a plan in place to demolish that, we just have to get to that point in the timeline.
Perfect. I just would love to have a clear explanation of what that can look like
Yes, ma'am. We
by
will
the
get
time
that
we
for
get to rulemaking and development. Certainly, board, I'll just offer, like, this has been something that I have been passionate about. I have had open discourse with Dr. Brewer and Mr. Whitehouse about Dr. Campbell's conversation regarding the location in SPAR. And with our new planner, I've had a discussion that I would want to have a data-based decision about placement of this, whether this is at SPAR or at Anthony. I want to make a data-based decision based on, my understanding is by April 1st, which is our group meeting with the other municipalities, JB Pro should have all of the data needed for what was referred to earlier this morning by Xavier as a crystal ball. So we should be able to have a full understanding of what is coming. And I want that information to determine where we put this, whether this combo school goes to Anthony or goes to SPAR, whether it's a patchwork like we did at South Ocala, or it's essentially a new like we're doing at Bellevue Elementary. I think those are things we hash out in the next 8 to 10 to 12 months as a board. But my question would be, my determination would be reliant on data to inform what that location can be, because I hadn't even thought about it before Dr. Campbell mentioned it, but I certainly don't want to be the board member that lives in this community for the rest of my life with a scarlet letter because we built a brand new school in SPAR and the population isn't there and we're busing kids a long way. Understanding Anthony is smaller and we'll have to be more creative, and that's why engineers are really great people and can figure stuff out, and that's not me. But I want to be able to have an informed decision about that, which isn't today. Today's purpose is simply to say, is the board committed to doing it? So certainly I'm committed to doing it and thinking it to impact, and I think it looks like we're going to be able to pretty much make it make sense while still also funding all of the other projects we intended to fund. So that's kind of my position. I'll open it up to the board. Ms. Conrad, you were, okay.
Good morning, Mr. Whitehouse. Just a quick question, and you may not have an answer for this today, but as we look at decreasing our maintenance cost, and so Anthony Elementary at around $9 million for 5 years and SPAR at around $7 million for 5 years. I would like to know if we piecemeal, if we're saving some buildings and we've got new buildings, I'd like to know what that estimated maintenance would be.
Yes.
As we move forward.
Yes, we can get that for you. We have it broken down by building on the school campus as to what the needs are, whether it's electrical, plumbing, roofing, flooring, et cetera. We have that broken down, so we can certainly get that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and to that point, I will add too, I would like to know, because, this Lakeboro Middle School, God bless them, it has just been this thing that has just, and so we've had to almost piecemeal maintenance to get us to the finish line, right? Like the gym we put off for whatever until we finally just did it because we were like, well, they're going to be there. So I want to, as we talk this to impact as a board, if this is the direction we go, I certainly would want to understand over the next 3 years while we get to a new school, how much maintenance would be required, to board member Conrad's point.
Yes, ma'am.
Reverend Cummings or Dr. Campbell?
You don't have any comments. Okay. I think I'll begin with the last, not the most recent point, but the kind of the last point of Dr. James touching on what I had said before. So I can be committed to having fewer schools on the north side. So let's say that right out of the gate, can be 100% committed to that. I pulled up the presentation from back in November because I was trying to get my eyes on, okay, what is the actual number of students we currently have on the north side, capacity for almost 3,300 students, and we currently have an enrollment at right around 2,700. I understand utilization at 80 some odd percent is ideal. It's obviously not where Marion County operates. We always operate in the 90s or so. So I understand ideal is in the 80s, but we always, but always is an operative word. We always tend to do, but then all the rest of the schools are 100+%. So just kind of having that as a thought process. So if we currently have capacity that is 400, 500 students more than what we have on that side, I understand that we have to get to something that's going to be a good operation place for the next couple of years. All of the decisions made prior to us many years ago, when Reddick was chosen to be made a school that holds 800, 750, whatever the number is, and it was one of the newer schools for the longest time, the farmland preservation area did not exist. The urban growth boundary did not exist. There were things that the county has done, comprehensive plan-wise, that have, including us not being included in the comprehensive plan for a period without an interlocal agreement for a long time. And just, there were lots of things that were happening from a planning standpoint. So to Dr. James' point, I think that it's difficult to make a decision today to say what we're going to do as far as combining the two schools, because I don't know that it's even going to be a combo that's going to be needed. And I know we've had the conversation about how far away Reddick is from these kids and how far they'd be on a bus, and from Fessenden. But I mean, if we're even looking Fessenden and Ocala Springs, we're encompassing all of those. I know Fessenden wasn't a part of it. My biggest question is, with the birth rates as low as they are, and the in-migration that we're having come to Marion County, not coming to the north side, I am significantly continuing to struggle to say that we would put especially $45 million brand new campus up there. And so if we're going to put a brand new campus, let's put it at North Marion. Like, if we're doing a brand new something on the north side, I don't know that it has to be elementary. And that's, I know that's a really tough spot to be in, but currently, and I don't foresee something drastically happening in Marion County's history that says we're going to all of a sudden have this huge influx of high schools that are going to be offering something different than what we do. Now, we may have charter elementary schools that pop up, absolutely. But every district that I know of that has a ton of charter K-8s, they don't have high school. And so all the high school kids end up coming back to public school anyway. I'm just seriously thinking as long-term as we can on these huge dollar implications. I can completely agree that we need to offline an elementary school on that in the north side, and birth rates, as well as the future of what this county potentially is going to look like from growth perspective and where the growth is happening. I'm just struggling with the agreement today that a $45 million or even a $31 million new combo school is the direction we have to go.
And
that's where I
I'll
am.
remind board members that during your conversations and planning, it's a good idea to remember that concurrency would always be useful in these scenarios as well.
Thank you.
So that's something to continue to lobby for.
So if I can open discourse with Dr. Campbell.
Yes.
And this is where I'm at, because I think I've been very transparent about this. 4 schools can become 3 in August of 26. It's very uncomfortable, but it is a reality when you look at the numbers. And I have consistently said the plan I want to come before us is to neutralize an entire campus and redistribute and then come up with a plan. That's not the plan that's presented for rezoning from the ABAC and from staff. And so what I can tell you is if there is not a promise of a new elementary school, it's already been said on the north end. They are going to put 7 to 10 kids in a car and they are going to use open enrollment and they are not going to change their school. They're not going to. So we're going to rezone and they're not going to go because every single school will still be available for open enrollment and they will all get in a car and their one grandma is going to drop them all off every single day and pick them up every single day. So my concern as a board member, which is why I have said from this dais, this rezoning plan is not going to work without the carrot of a promise of something new. Because if we promise something new, then they're gonna say, okay, well, I'm gonna do this, and then this is gonna come. But without the then this is going to come, this rezoning plan is not going to work. It will leave Reddick still far under capacity. They're all gonna be exactly where they are. There will be some kids who can't figure out transportation and will go because they need the transportation. But based on what I know about the North End, they're gonna figure it out. And they're not gonna go anywhere. And so I don't disagree with you, Dr. Campbell. I would love nothing more than to put 50 million at North Marion High School. Where do I sign? And neutralize an elementary school. But that's not the plan that's not what's being presented. And what we know is we have got to address Reddick immediately. And so, yes, sure, I would have loved the ABAC to say, send kids from SPAR to Reddick, send Anthony to SPAR, and get rid of a campus, right? Please don't haze my house and toilet paper it, because I live a quarter mile from Anthony Elementary. But sure, that's what I would have loved, because ultimately, that is what's best for our district when we look at the whole picture, and that is ultimately what our job is. But that's not what's being presented to us. And so I do believe we are in a compromised position as the board, because I don't think the rezoning is gonna work without this. And if we're not in alignment with this, then none of it's gonna happen, and we're gonna still be in the same position next year.
So I appreciate that. Yes, open dialogue if
Yeah,
you
go
have
ahead.
it, because, so the scenario that you just presented, that grandma's gonna pile all the kids in the car, well, if they're third graders, this isn't gonna impact them anyway. Because we're not gonna have a new school on their campus by the time that they're gonna be, it's still in elementary school. So, I mean,
It doesn't matter though, because they don't wanna leave SPAR.
okay, so that's fine. And I appreciate that. I understand people are definitely connected to their campuses. We have seen that in so many conversations over the years. However, I, as a board member, regardless of the presentation that's coming to us, am not willing to give a $30 million carrot. I'm not willing to give a $30 million carrot. I'm just not. As we sit right now, because the kids right now, we know we have enrollment of 2,700 kids. Now, certainly some of those kids are coming to Fordham, they're coming to Madison Street, they live in.
Family is one of them.
Right, so I mean, they are doing that, and they're already making those drives if they can get into those schools. So I understand that. The birth rate is something that Marion County is not having to deal with right now that everybody else around the state is. We just aren't because of so much in-migration. But again, in-migration is coming to the south side. Now, if the county wants to say, we've already issued X number of thousands of permits on the north side, and with Buc-ee's coming in and the whole new interchange, and we've got 6 new developments happening right around there, and and water park, whatever. If that's what is coming, and then you can also tell me that those landowners are also selling that the land is happening, that there's all the things, just because you're issuing permits, or just because you have given the land use, let's say that, just because you've changed land use designation, doesn't mean there's actually permits being pulled and people actually building the homes either. So if we hear that, and we know all of a sudden everything's changing, and we're now gonna move the farmland preservation area, and we're gonna cut out pieces of it and all that, and I am just continuing to struggle. And I understand that the plan that we've been presented now twice, because the slides are almost exactly the same, because I went back to the November presentation. The group now has met multiple times, and they've come to the same realization that they're ready for us to spend taxpayer dollars on something that I'm struggling with. I contend, and that's our jobs. I mean, our job is to manage the money. And that's where I sit.
Board Member Conrad.
Mr. Whitehouse, is there, and this may be a lack of memory on my part, so I apologize if that's the case, but is there a conversation that you'd like to share that the boundary committee discussed, like in their reasoning for some of these decisions? Is there part of that you'd like to share with the board?
Yes, I mean, we talked about what Dr. James shared about could we just simply move all the kids to Anthony to Spar and put 25 portables at the campus? We have the property. So yes, that was part of the discussion. Again, the conversation as we talk about it is each portable is $100,000 to set up. So you're looking at close to $3 million worth of portables. And we also know portables are not the best educational option for students. So our goal with the sales tax dollars is to reduce the number of portables to make sure that we have brick and mortar operation for our students. And so that was not the most favorable solution just because of that.
I'm sorry, but I just have to interject respectfully. That is not necessary. There are 363 open seats at Reddick Collier. 350 students could go from Spar to Reddick, and all of Anthony could go to Spar, and they would all be at max fish capacity. So I just want to be very crystal clear with the community that is not that we are the people in charge of money. Absolutely, from an operations perspective, that is the superintendent and your staff's purview. And I appreciate what you're saying, but when it comes to money, and we are the ones who have to ultimately sign the check for that, that is not an accurate statement. And I certainly don't mean to be combative, but if we're gonna have the conversation, we need to be crystal clear. That is not necessary. 3/4 of Spar's campus could go to Reddick and fill Reddick immediately, and all of Anthony could go to Spar and fill Spar, and everyone would operate the same. Would we maybe need to spend $3 million to fix building 1 at Spar? Absolutely. But that is a reality that no one seems to be talking about, and I have been, and honestly, I have been saying since I became a board member, and yes, I do want to deliver a new school to the North End as a compromise for having to close schools and redistribute, and I think that is more than appropriate, because the North End hasn't gotten jack diddly in a really long time, so I feel very passionate about that, but there's no need to move a single portable. And if we were having rezoning conversations starting next week about all of Anthony going to Spar and most of Spar going to Reddick, then none of this show would be happening, because then we would just be talking about where are we putting the $40 million on the North End. And so I'm sorry, but I had to interject because that's not an accurate statement.
I'm right there. That's exactly where I am. It's not portables that are needed. It's moving all those Spar kids to Reddick, moving Anthony kids to Spar, and that solves all the utilization issues.
Well, and it's not even that. Like, Fesden North kids could go to Reddick, and Spar West kids could go to Reddick, and then Anthony West kids could go. I mean, there's a variety of ways it could happen. It doesn't have to be that pure, but that option wasn't presented to us, and now we're stuck holding the short end of the stick to solve a problem that we're in disalignment with fundamentally, and I think that that's the most frustrating part from the board perspective. Sorry to speak for the whole board, but I think I'm at least speaking for me and Dr. Campbell. So I don't know what we do. I don't know where we go from here, because ultimately we have community meetings next week to discuss rezoning in a plan that as the North End person, I'm going to encourage the community to be against the idea, because if it's not coming with the promise of something else and a combination, we're just shifting a problem from one school to another. So I don't know where we go. Reverend Cummings, do you have anything to add to this conversation?
Nothing.
You have no opinion on the matter.
Sometimes we need to just listen and hear what's being presented and then absorb that. We know there's an issue. This is not a new issue. The North End is not a new issue, but it's how we're going to attack this. It's about the recommendation that's going to come from our staff. So I want to hear everything. I don't have to jump out and say anything right now.
Okay, well, the board has to make a decision today, and there are 4 of us, so not 5, which makes the decision more challenging. Board Member Conrad?
I'm struggling. I'm struggling. So Dr. James, I have a question for you. In your opinion, and living on the North End, and students being packed up and moved to where they want to stay in the North End, if we hypothetically rezoned and put Reddick at closer to capacity, are they going to show up?
They would have to, because there wouldn't be, if we neutralize a campus, everyone's at 90% or above, there's no more open enrollment.
Okay.
Open enrollment is only existing under 90%, which the plan presented allows for all campuses to stay at 90% that are involved. except for Fesden, because Fesden's not being touched. And obviously Ocala Springs, because kids are coming out of Ocala Springs, but they're not, it's still over 90%. So if a campus gets offline, then yes, it becomes available.
I could be on board with that scenario.
And like, respectfully, I think if we have a rezoning plan in place, then Schools of Hope, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we have a building plan in place and Schools of Hope is not available, then if we have a rezoning plan for the 27-28 school year, like we make a decision, right? We go through rulemaking development for a decision for the 27-28 school year. Then we say in 27-28, we are getting rid of Anthony Elementary as an example. And so then we are having rezoning conversations more than a year away, and we go through rulemaking development. So does it mean that Fesden moves, or does it mean Reddick moves, whatever that means, to get rid of the campus? Or maybe we're getting rid of SPAR. I don't know. I just know that SPAR is a larger campus fish capacity-wise, so it can fit more students. I mean, technically it's not actually. So really they could go one way or the other. It doesn't really matter. But ultimately, the commitment is we're doing rulemaking and development for a 27-28 rezoning. And if that is enough to solve the Schools of Hope problem, because we have done rulemaking and development and we have a rezoning plan, and that gets us from all of 26-27 school year, then I think that's the conversation we have. Because it seems like we're pretty much in agreement that this is not the solution to get us to the finish line of what we're looking to accomplish.
Chair, I'd also like to add, if we're going to entertain the conversation of rezoning and moving students to Reddick, I think all of the schools should be part of the conversation. Because my goal as a board member, besides being fiscally responsible, is that our students are spending the least amount of time on a bus as possible. So if that includes rezoning part of Fesden, then that includes part of rezoning Fesden.
I would agree.
And maybe it doesn't, but I'm just saying, I think it all should be on the table, so that it makes sense for our students and our families as best as possible.
Yes.
Some of those Fessenden kids could be going to Romeo or to, I mean, I agree. I think that it depends on how far, if you look at that zone, it goes way out there. So, I mean, you have College Park. I mean, some of those kids are not that far away from this College Park zone and the Romeo zones. So it just depends on where they're located in that. And I know rezoning is a large conversation, but what I was hoping for, and I know with this attendance boundary committee that we formed, and y'all formed quickly, and you've met so many times, and so grateful for all the recommendations. But what I was hoping for was the plan that showed us how we would completely offline a campus because of decreasing enrollment on the north side and decreased plans for enrollment on the north side. And that's not what we have before us.
So, Dr. Cameron, can I just add for clarification, because the plan does call for offlining a campus in the year 2029, but I just want to make sure what I'm hearing from the board. Your preference would be a plan that doesn't cost any money.
Well, no, I mean, that's not my preference, but I think it's a critical, and I'm not speaking for the board, but I think it's a hierarchy of critical need. Critical need number one is to get our campuses to 80+%, preferably 90. And we can do that without an entire campus and spending no money. And then when we're in a place where everything is at 90 or above, we take a deep breath and decide, what now? Do we build it wherever we offline, whether that's Anthony or SPAR, because those are the two logicals to offline. Do we then build a new elementary school there? Do we build a K-8 there? I don't know what we do, but that gives us the time to take a deep breath and figure out what are we going to do. But right now, this solution is only done with like $50 million. And trust me, I want to spend the $50 million on the north end. But if the money is better spent by spending 10 or 15 to revitalize a campus, and then, or even spending 30 to revitalize a campus, and then spend 15 or 20 at the high school to give it revitalization, I don't know. But we don't even have that option on the table, because the option that's presented isn't allowable for anything else. And you can solve the problem another way. I guess that's the thing that I'm struggling with, is like the problem is solved other ways.
So what you're saying, you want other options.
Well,
That's basically what you're saying. You don't like this option, so.
I just don't agree with this. I mean, like, I have been consistently struggling with this option if it is not paired with the commitment from the board for a new school. Because we're moving the problem from one place to another. And if we rezone and the board doesn't commit to the combo school, then what was the purpose of rezoning? And that's where I've consistently been. Mr. Ayers, did you have, or did you just come forward because you felt the heat?
Compelled, because we're talking
I
about
asked him to
zoning.
come forward, and we have Attorney Blackman that can speak to Schools of Hope a little bit, just to clarify some of the statements that have been made.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I think there's two important things to think about when it comes to Schools of Hope. One of the big things is we're hopefully getting some clarity this legislative session on Schools of Hope. Additionally, even if we fail to get that, and there appears to be some interest in that based on just how things went through, but I won't hold my breath because they never know what the legislature might do. But regardless, though, there is some flexibility within, and this is only to speak to the law on Schools of Hope, not to discuss which option is best. There certainly is some opportunity for us to, if an application came in, for us to be able to deny it on certain grounds. And when it's denied, there is an appeals process that can go through, but certainly what our plans are is relevant in that determination as well. So there is, it's not as simple as they can come in, say they want to be here, and then next week they're, with their key and bags showing up. There is a lot of opportunity for us to exert some control if we're making logical decisions along the way. So I say that to say it's not as black and white when it comes to a School of Hope trying to make a decision to co-locate with us.
Yes, and I would say Schools of Hope was bred out of a conservative philosophy that ultimately the taxpayer dollar is funding public education. And it is a way to force the hand of school boards to be more aware of their use on their campuses and to get creative. That's how I see it from a 10,000-foot view. Schools of Hope has forced school boards, which is why you see Orange County closing 7 schools all of a sudden. You think they would be closing 7 schools all of a sudden if it weren't for Schools of Hope? Maybe, but maybe not. It's forcing us to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, which, again, since I got on the board, I've been talking about needing to consolidate on the north end. So I just want to make sure we're not making decisions that will put ourselves in a position where Schools of Hope would be able to take action. And it sounds like basically as long as we have a plan, we're probably good.
I think that's probably, now I can never predict exactly how things will shake out in an appeals process, but I would say certainly I think as long as you have a well thought out plan about utilization that's at least, it can't be one day or in the distant future, but you have an actual plan about what we plan to do. There's a lot more, they just can't sneak in and, hey, we're going to close it in 3 years and they're going to sneak, there's a process of that. I think as long as the board makes a well-reasoned decision, I think we're going to be fine.
Okay,
Should be.
I respect that. Mr. Ayers, did you have things you wanted to add? Regrettably?
I don't know if I want to step in there.
Get a little nervous. I will concur with everything that Ms. Blackman just said. Schools of Hope, when it first was announced a year ago, it was a shock value, boom. And you had some bad operators that operated badly. And then, of course, the governor then came out and made a statement that said that, but any of the Schools of Hope that are legitimate, that are going through, are in highly urban areas where it's a densely populated area. And again, I can't foresee the future. I don't think a Schools of Hope will come into Reddick Collier to do a class because there's not enough population for walkers or for them to do. Not saying that wouldn't happen, but again, things are happening in the legislature right now to change a lot of that aspect for that. And so I will concur with everything that Mr. Blackman just said, that yes, it's still an issue, but it's an undetermined issue at this moment.
And Dr. Campbell?
So my concern about Schools of Hope honestly doesn't impact the schools we're talking about right now. My biggest concern for Schools of Hope is actually Oakcrest. So, I mean, that's the spot. If there's Schools of Hope's gonna apply, it's gonna come into Oakcrest. And that's not even what we're talking about right now, because yes, they were a part of the conversation briefly, but not what we're talking about today. What I can say, Dr. James, because you're asking for somewhat of a commitment to say we're gonna build something new, I could completely be on board with the concept of offlining a campus and building something new, whether that's just one classroom building or a new cafeteria or something. But building a $55 million campus, or $45 million campus, I will not be on board with. The other thing that I also want us to be very, very cognizant of is neither Spar nor Anthony nor Reddick may be the locations where we actually do need to build, and it may be Fessenden where we need to build. I mean, we also had at one point that it was Ocala Springs where we're adding a classroom building. There are other parts on the north side that are still classified the north side, but with the growth that's happening in the Donnell and Romeo, all of that area kind of coming, and again, that does connect right into that Fessenden zone. Maybe it becomes that we have space there too. Maybe that becomes the location where something is built. So I absolutely, as a board member, can commit to say, I agree that we need to do some kind of construction on the north side. I will not commit to being a $45 million brand new school. That's where I sit today.
Okay.
So where are we at? That sounded very country of me. Where are we?
I would like a different rezoning plan. I'd like what we've discussed. It appears that at least 3 of us are interested in a rezoning that includes moving students to Reddick. So I would like to see.
Well, the rezoning plan presented does move students to Reddick.
I think all 4 of us are in agreement about the reason.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Yeah, I wasn't sure where you stood.
I mean,
So you just.
we're not talking about rezoning right now. That's.
I know, but we need to land where we've got students where we need them to be.
So I think the struggle here is that this conversation is not about rezoning, but it is about rezoning. Mm-hmm. And we are not being asked anything about rezoning right now. What we're being asked is to make a commitment for a capital expenditure on the north end. For us, that is tied to rezoning and site utilization. So the struggle, respectfully, is that at least some of the board feels apprehension to make a financial commitment when we're not necessarily in agreement with the rezoning that's coming forward, because other plans could do it differently. And, Reverend Cummings, to your point, I'm not looking for options. I just don't like this. I have been pretty consistent that, I don't think this solves the problem. I don't think this plan solves the problem without the commitment of a combo school and taking a school offline in 3 years. And if that's not where the majority of the board is willing to go, which I am in agreement, if that was what everyone was willing to do, I'm willing to do that. I've been consistent about that. Okay, let's do this if we're building a combo school and they're all coming together. But if that's not what the majority of the board is willing to do, then this rezoning doesn't make sense to me. And I would rather just take a campus offline and merge the campuses and then decide what we're gonna do.
Which is where I sit. The scenario you just presented is where I sit. That the rezoning means that we take a campus offline. Y'all figure out which one. And figure out which campus we take offline and.
Not Fessenden.
Which, it's a whole separate conversation that I still believe there is a pathway to make Fessenden something different than it is today that would actually make everybody in the whole community and the whole region comfortable. But we'll not address that today.
Not everybody in it.
Well, I just wouldn't go on.
Well, there's gonna be a lot of people that aren't happy about Anthony offlining either.
Correct.
So we're gonna have people that are not happy about a school being offlined.
One of them.
End of story.
Sure, I think there's a slight difference in the documented historic preservation between.
There's a history behind Anthony as well. We just haven't heard quite as much of. Anyway, so I would like to see a presentation, or just you guys figure it out, that we're offlining a campus, pick it. Whichever one makes the most sense based on county permitting, based on all the things that JB Pro's been hired to do. Which one of these campuses that we would then have offlined that becomes a part of the conversations for the community meeting. And then after we know what that plan is, and we determine where the majority of the students are gonna live based on those new zones that we create, then we talk about where new construction potentially needs to occur and what that construction looks like in order for us to accommodate those needs.
I second all of that, which I have consistently seconded since I got on the board.
And so with following that discussion, could we, so building one at SPAR, like what would the cost be involved?
It's $3.5 million.
Yeah, I mean, but we just mentioned that one thing. Are there other things that have not come up today? I mean, I certainly don't know all of the facility needs at the campuses, and if you select one to offline, and then, you know, what are the needs going to be at the schools where we're moving students to, and what would that cost be?
Yeah, so I just want to kind of back up and make sure I recap where we're at, because this is a bit of a pivot from where we were at the last work session moving into these community conversations. So if we are not comfortable with the rezoning proposal that we have, we're going to have to come back to the table with the ABAC and look at a proposal to take one of these campuses offline, which we do not have the timeline to get that done in time for the 26-27 school year, so it would be the 27-28 school year.
That's why I offered a 27-28 rezoning, which is a much more appropriate timeline for rezoning. And if we have that rezoning timeline established, then we can confidently say to any Schools of Hope application, well, Reddick will be full in a year, so, or less than a year.
So then at that point, does the board want us to cancel the meetings, or would we go ahead and just gather community input? I mean, the whole purpose of these community meetings was to share our proposal and gather feedback on our current proposal. So if we are gonna totally shift gears and not do anything for 26-27 with rezoning, then we have to reshape that conversation with the community, and we'll have to reform the ABAC to take a look at what that would look like and bring back another proposal for 27-28 for you all.
I've been on this board long enough to see how the board has taken things off the table and ended up coming right back to the same thing that they came to before. Y'all have done it. Y'all have presented certain things to us. The board didn't like it or whatever, and we still came right back to the same thing. So I don't think you need to just scrap all of this, but I just think there may need to be some other, for this board to have some, I'm gonna go back to the word options.
Well, so like, everything that's being presented can still be done, but they could also be combined into one school. They could go, we could offline a campus for August of 26.
We would have to redraw all the attendance boundaries.
Correct.
We have not done that at this point, and so we would have to get back together with the committee, redraw all the boundaries, bring those redrawn boundaries back to a work session, which would probably be April, because there's only one work session in March. That does not leave us a timeline to then hold community meetings to gather the input and then do the rulemaking and development. It would have to be the 27-28 school year.
I agree with you. What I'm saying is, the plan that's presented is a combo school. What I hear the board saying is, instead of operating isolated campuses for 3+ years, because we are assuming that at the election, when the board seats, up to 3 of them can change, the board will not have a completely different perspective about building, because that is also a reality that should probably be taken into consideration. The only thing that is we're in disalignment with is operating 4 campuses instead of 3 until we get to whatever new thing is coming. That is the difference. Is that a fair assessment? I mean, that is essentially what we're in disalignment with.
I think we need 3 campuses.
3.
I think we 3.
Not 4.
Yeah.
We need 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
I never said that. I just said we need to hear all this out. Never said I wasn't against the 3 campuses. we know that there's issues at these all these campuses, to be honest with you, as far as maintaining them, and it's gonna cost a whole bunch of money. Some would just say, let's just take the one offline that has the most, that's gonna cost the most to maintain. Some would say that.
Well, that would be Reddick, because Reddick needs a new water management treatment, and I'm by no means the facilities executive director, but if I'm going off the top of my knob, I'm gonna guess that it's about $15 million in the next 5 years for Reddick because of the water treatment and a few of the other maintenance costs that are coming up. Now, Reddick doesn't make the most sense because it is the biggest campus and it can fit the most students, but if I remember back to historical conversations, which I'm pretty decent at most times, it's north of $10 million at Reddick because of the cost of the water treatment.
Right.
So, but if we're looking at Spar and Anthony alone, then yes, I agree with you, Reverend Cummings. So, the question that Mr. Whitehouse posed to the board is the community meetings that are starting next Thursday. What do you want staff to do?
I am leaning towards canceling them, and not because I do not want community input. I very much value community input, but what I have found in my experience attending these meetings is it gets the community very upset. And so I don't, if we're not prepared to make a decision on something that will, or we can't make a decision on something that's gonna be impactful for the next school year, then I think it would be wise to delay that conversation.
I agree. If it's going to create angst and
Well, unnecessary angst.
unnecessary angst and unnecessary animosity, unnecessary anxiety for families and schools, then yeah, we would need to delay that until we're bringing back the best presentations for the community.
Well, and what I would like to see from a community meeting, because my recollection reminds me that the conversation we've continuously had for the last 3.5 years is that we want to address, because Feston is over 100%, Ocala Springs is over 100%, and then Reddick's less than 50, and then Spar and Anthony are at like 70, right? And so the conversation has been consistently to address all of it. And this is not addressing all of it. This is addressing essentially the auxiliary zone, some Ocala Springs kids coming to Anthony, and then Spar, Anthony, Reddick. And so, and really nothing at Spar. We're just leaving Spar with 200 kids and then gonna build a school, right? We're not bringing anyone into Spar, we're taking out of Spar. And so I would say that a more informed community meeting is appropriate because community meetings are a part of rulemaking and development, and it's a part of the rezoning process. And so it has to be done, but it needs to be done with the appropriate information. And certainly, nothing positive ever comes from having a community meeting that has information that is not correct. And so if the ABAC is going to reconvene to have a broader conversation about all of the sites that I mentioned, potentially more, I don't know, to provide a recommendation for offlining a site, and then those community meetings happen. I think that is a more effective use of everyone's time and doesn't get misinformation into the community that then 3 months down the line, because this essentially by the time we get into this late spring, we're gonna be having community meetings presumably about 27, 28 rezoning, right? I mean, that would be the plan, Mr. Ayers?
That, without having to be able to sit down on a piece of paper and look at the timeline, we would want to have community meetings before the end of the school year with a plan, just so that we know that. But this would involve multiple steps.
Absolutely, but like when we looked at the community meetings we had for the high school, rezoning. So we rezoned high schools for next school year. Those community meetings were held at the end of last school year.
My plan has always been to have an 18-month lead-in for rezoning to allow all the steps to happen appropriately with transparency and going forward. So that would be correct.
So, board, What is your expectation from staff?
So I'm looking at the timeline that we originally had with the November work session and the attendance of boundary committee meeting and then the work session in December that I can't seem to get my hands on. I've looked in all the meetings and I can't see exactly what date in December that we had that briefing, if that occurred. I feel like it did. And then now we're in February. Fine, it has to be for 27, 28. Let's get it started right now. I guess when I think that we started back in November with this, I'm just disappointed that there isn't even something, a plan at all, that ever showed what the attendance boundaries could have looked like if we were to offline a school, which is combining two campuses. But I understand that that was all about combining two campuses to make that one campus have 700 plus students on it, rather than rezoning all the kids to get them to Reddick, which is the problem we're trying to solve. That's been the problem all along. So I am disappointed, and I'm gonna say that. But if we have to do it for 27, 28, because we don't have the timeline to get it all done for 26, 27, then we help Mr. Ayers, because he was already frustrated with our timeline was gonna be shorter than 18 months anyway, which I don't believe it has to be 18 months. I don't believe it has to be that. But when you're only probably impacting about 300 kids, and I know 300 kids is 300 kids, that's a lot, but 18 months is a really, really long time for the board to be making decisions like this. And we have other districts around the state that are closing 6, 7, 8 schools.
Right now for next.
Right now for next school year. Like, that's right now. So I appreciate that we want to be really super diligent and give our community just the extra little pat on the back that we're here with them, and I appreciate all of that, but it's just not real world. I wish we had been presented what we have been asking for. And maybe we didn't ask for it the right way, and it's on me that I didn't ask for it exactly the right way. But all along, it's been offlining a school is what needs to happen, and we've never been presented with what that looks like, that we could actually do it right now without any money.
Well, and the plan that's presented does do that. It just does it in 3 years.
With a lot of
and
money.
It does it with the promise of a lot of money. It's a trifecta. No, that's not tri, that's dose. It's a dose-fecta. I don't even know what the word is there, but, and I think that's, at least from the majority of the board, the heartburn. Now, again, I'm cool with that, because I think the North End needs a new school. But if the majority of the board is not willing to make that commitment, then that plan doesn't work. It just doesn't work, which is really why we had this meeting today, because I said to staff, as the chair, I said, I don't want you guys to go to community meetings and promise something that the board has not made a commitment to do, because one, that's not gonna weather well with the board, but two, if the board says we're not gonna do that, then all of a sudden we've had meetings in the community which are not reflective of a commitment the board has made. So I'm very grateful that we got this on an agenda for today and hashed this out, because certainly that would have not been productive and helpful on the North End with essentially a promise of a new school that the board isn't willing to fund. So let's, I don't disagree with Dr. Campbell that school districts all around the state are rezoning in months, so I don't know why we can't, but.
Is that statute driven? Like,
No, ma'am.
it's just.
No, it's
yeah.
just
I mean,
personal
because-
preference.
Right, because I would prefer for us to start that next year.
I would too. I would prefer that
I would
this become
prefer
a
to start.
26, 27 plan.
Agreed. Save the money.
So you want, just to confirm, you're saying you want to start, which it probably neutralizes the involvement of the ABAC, to be very respectful, like, the rezoning of potentially 5 or 6 schools, Pheasants Bar, Reddick, Anthony, Ocala Springs, and then obviously the auxiliary zones, right? Those were all included in the conversation. So, the likelihood that the ABAC will be able to have significant and productive conversation unless those individuals are willing to give half a day to sit and have constructive conversation is probably unlikely to also accomplish this ahead of May 30th, when the last day of school is, because ultimately the messaging has to go out before school is over. So I don't know that the two can marry. Do you have an opinion on that, Mr. Whitehouse?
No, I mean, we established the ABAC for the purpose of looking at boundaries every year. So I don't know that not involving them is necessary. I mean, we can do it either way, but I do want to just kind of go back to a couple of things. You know, one, we're reading in the news a lot about closing schools, but we don't know how much work was done on the back end and how many months of conversations took place before we got to read about those things in the news. So I don't want to just rush into thinking that we're doing things slower than anybody else, because we don't know. The other thing that I think we need to talk about too is when we first approached the ABAC, the goal was balancing enrollment at the north end, and that's what all the prior presentations were, the board, where we wanted to balance enrollment. And the ABC, through their discussions about balancing enrollment, also decided that it's not just enough to hit an 8% target, we really need to look at combining schools to reduce the operation. So we can go in either direction. I'm happy to work with the team to make sure we get that done, but I just want to make sure that we have clear direction of what we're trying to do, that our goal right now is to come back with a proposal for rezoning for one less school on the north end.
I think the timeline needs to be hashed out, but everything you just said is correct. And so what is the expectation of the board for understanding things are about to get really spicy, because August is in 6 months. So understanding, if we are intending for August of 26, backwards planning into that, notification has to go out by the last day of school. Obviously, it needs to be before then, but most certainly by the last day of school. So we're 3.5 months from the last day of school. And so when we backwards plan into that, what does that look like? We have to have, just talk us through what the expectation is. You have to come up with a plan, you have to present it to us, then we have to have community meetings, and then we have to have rulemaking and development, and then we vote on it. Is that correct?
So I want to be clear, because I think what we talked about a minute ago was changing the plan to 27-28 for coming back with a plan for 27-28, that we would then be able to have community meetings at the end of the school year for that plan so that we could do the rule development.
You did hear that, and then at least 2, if not 3 board members said, what about 26-27?
Which we started this conversation before November, but publicly in November, that we were potentially going to do something to this effect. So I appreciate that this is going to be, wow, we're doing it. But for transparency and the community's sake, we've been talking about this. We were talking about this when we were talking about Fessenden. Like, we've been talking about this. So I know that this is going to be a shock to everyone, but that while there's a faction of our community that this is going to impact, and they're going to certainly get spicy, to Dr. James' word, certainly going to get spicy, there's another part of our community that has been very vocal about why in the world do we have a school with 40% capacity? Like, why, and for multiple years now.
Oh, multiple's an understatement.
Multiple years. And in the year that all of our schools are going to site-based budgeting, this is the year that this decision that this board has to make is a bold one. And so that's where I sit, and I don't know if everybody else does.
I agree.
But we've been talking about 26-27 all along, I thought.
Well, no, respectfully, you didn't hear us wrong, Mr. Whitehouse. There was certainly a conversation probably 10 minutes ago about 27-28. So I don't want to make it seem like you just heard that from a fairy. That was actually real.
Yes, it just wasn't the November conversation.
Correct. And so backwards planning or forwards planning, however you want to go, for the next 3.5 months to make the 26-27 school year work, what does that look like?
Not great is the short answer. I think part of the challenge we're going to have is the amount of work that has to be done in the background from Stephen's department to be able to make that happen in Skyward and in our geomappings. That's part of the challenge of why we wanted to make sure we started early, so that we can get all of that work done in the right amount of time. I think part of the other challenges we're going to have is, as we are looking at our plans for next year district-wide, taking a school offline was not a part of them, and so we're going to throw an additional wrench into some of the things that we've already laid out that we're going to have to really quickly pivot and punt on. So a 27-28 is much more feasible to get it done appropriately.
And that's because we're in February, and in November, when we were having this conversation, 26, 27 would have been feasible. I just want to make sure that my thought all along was, we're talking about next school year, and so I know that we're in February now.
Sure, so if we were moving forward with the current attendance boundary proposal that we gave you all in January for what those redraws would look like, we will absolutely have that done with the community conversations that start next week, all of the work in the background done, and everything would be proposed and shared with parents by May. But if we have to go back and start all over again, we've now lost 3 months in what was a very tight timeline to get things done.
So I just want to, and I'm really not trying to be combative, Mr. Whitehouse, and I'm trying to find the slide, and maybe Dr. Campbell can help me. I'm trying to find the slide from the November workshop where we talk about the amount of kids left at SPAR.
I know, I'm trying to find that slide too, and I can't find it. That's what I'm looking for.
Because the number was like 250 as zoned, but we all know that the as zone number is just, which Stephen operates in worst case scenario, because they could all show up, but realistically they don't, because some of those SPAR kids are going to Madison Street. I know them personally, right? And so, what I'm just like really struggling with is like, the plan as presented is already done. All we're saying is, you got about 200 more kids you got to find space for, and Reddick is only at 80% in the new plan. And so, Dr. Campbell,
I can't find
somebody
it.
help
Like,
us.
January 22nd work session.
Thank you. I'm like, I am looking in December, I'm looking all over the place. It's January 22nd. Thank you.
Ms. Martinez-Young just said it's under attendant ABAC updates by Mr. Ayers.
So just, certainly I need about 45 seconds to pull this up, because I don't think the whole plan has to change. And that's what I'm personally, I guess, struggling with, is the whole plan doesn't have to change. What needs to change is, here it is, the 248 as zoned, which we all know is not the 248 as zoned. Most of them could fit at Reddick.
And how many of those kids just got enrollment for school choice yesterday? I mean, because that also just happened last night.
I'm not saying to redo everything we've done. I think everything that we've done in moving up Ocala Springs and moving the auxiliary kids that are zoned for SPAR to Anthony and moving the SPAR kids to Reddick, like all of that work that's already been done is done, and there's nothing that needs to change with the work that's been done. Presumably, if we don't involve Fesden, essentially, which is something that I did mention personally, so I'll acknowledge that. But if we don't mention Fesden and we keep all the work the same we've done, all we're doing is essentially bringing a few more of the SPAR down and a few more of the SPAR, and the rest of the SPAR West to fill Reddick. And I realize that requires probably improvements to Building 1 at Reddick. Building 1, Building 10. It has a 1 in it.
Building 10 is the one that was built in the 1950s.
Correct,
Required
Building 10.
A lot of improvement to be able to put students into that.
So it would require some facility improvement to Reddick to make that workable. I've been in it. It needs technology, it needs whiteboards or smart boards, and it needs toilets, probably. However, which this plan presented probably doesn't touch Building 10, which is, so I'm just saying, I don't know why we have to redo all the work we've done. I think what we're just saying is take the last 250 as zoned at SPAR and parse them out.
So just kind of working back through a timeline of how we would go through this. So we would need to go back, redraw those boundary lines for those students, come back to another work session to present what the plan is for redrawing those boundary lines and who's going to what school and which school would be offline for next year, to then get consensus from the board with that new approval, to then schedule the community meetings, which the community meetings at that point would not happen until probably late April, May, to then come back with the rulemaking and development for you all to then actually get the proposal finalized.
I can personally say I'm a little in disalignment with that. I think that we push the community meetings back to after spring break instead of before spring break. And this board has a special work session to discuss this item before spring break, if possible. And we already have a work session, the first, which is a very full work session with our 1 p.m. Goal of completion. So we would have a work session the following week. and it's only February 19th. There's still time for publication for that. And we have a special work session to discuss this item, and community meetings are scheduled for after spring break. We're not talking about recreating the wheel. The work has been done. We're talking about the 248 as-zoned kids at SPAR, and what do we do with them?
And the 76 of them that are already at Anthony just stay there. That's part of it. I mean, the red 76 students, isn't that part of that number that's currently?
No, those are going. The red means they're going. So the 72, the proposed zone A, those would go. The red means like deduction. So those those Anthony kids go to Anthony. The 248 left are the kids that are truly SPAR kids. They're SPAR kids.
But with the increase of the 76 in D, right?
You are correct, I'm sorry. And D is north of Anthony.
Right, so then the D, Anthony, the
I'm sorry,
76
yes, you're right.
would just stay with Anthony. So Anthony doesn't really have much of a zone change as far as this is concerned, that all those kids from SPAR would just go to Reddick. But I don't think that works math-wise, but.
It almost works. There's also space at Fort McCoy, I dare not.
The other conversation we had prior to this was that all the Fessenden kids would go to Reddick. That's what, we never had the conversation, I don't believe, that all of the SPAR kids go to Reddick. I don't know that we actually had that conversation, but that's what we're talking about today, essentially.
Well, no, all of the SPAR kids wouldn't go to Reddick, because the D76 is the area north of Anthony, and then the auxiliary zone, which is going to SPAR right now, which is really zoned for Anthony, which the auxiliary zone, and you guys aren't looking at it, so I will try and read the unless Dr. Brewer's looking at it, but where's the guide?
It's also all the students that live around SPAR, because right now the plan is to pull Citra students over to Reddick, but the kids who actually live around SPAR are still attending SPAR. So we would take all of the SPAR students and shift them over to Reddick that live in SPAR.
Correct, because the school's no longer in operation. Well, I don't see
What do you need?
And the
which one is the auxiliary zone? Which letter?
distance between SPAR and Reddick
A, B,
is
C, D,
7
E,
miles.
F, G. I can't figure out which one is the auxiliary zone.
Mr. Whitehouse, what do you want me to do? I think it might be D, but I,
Yeah, without it in front of me, I'm
Here,
not
let me
sure,
take
but
this down then.
Stephen did make a point as well, that we have students that we're pulling from Ocala Springs up to Anthony, so if we
could still
remove
do
the
that.
Anthony option, those students would remain at Ocala Springs. which would
No,
remain
if the
at-
maths, they could still fit.
But but what we're saying is that if Anthony is a school that we take offline, those students would then go from Ocala Springs up to SPAR.
I think what we're talking about is not taking Anthony offline and just taking SPAR
SPAR
offline,
offline.
because the plan that we've already constructed leaves SPAR with the least amount of kids.
Correct.
And D is not the auxiliary zone. D,
F is the auxiliary.
that's what I thought, it's 123. So those 123, which is a red out of SPAR, are kids who are zoned for Anthony but couldn't go to Anthony when Evergreen closed.
So then is the plan to offline SPAR?
That's what Dr. Campbell and I are talking about,
Disperse those kids.
right?
disperse
Not to
those
speak for
kids
you.
between Reddick, Anthony, and
Reddick and Anthony, that's the only
I
proposition.
mean, I don't think there's any as far,
The problem is there's not very far east to go to Fort McCoy.
Yeah.
But there is space at Fort McCoy.
there absolutely is, but I don't know that there's far enough east.
That's the conversation Mr. Ayers has consistently had with me, is those kids don't live east enough to make Fort McCoy make sense.
Yeah,
So, what I'm saying is if those D76 kids stay at Anthony, which there's room for, to put Anthony at 100%, then you're literally talking about 170 kids as zoned, which we know is an inflated number at SPAR. So 170 as zoned would dang near fit at Reddick. Unless my math ain't mathin', which sometimes it doesn't, but I think my math is mathin' pretty decently today.
So we can certainly redraw the map for you, and if you want to create a special work session, we will absolutely have it ready for you. I do just want to point out with that, part of the unintended consequence of moving that quickly on closing a school is that our timeline for staff transfers is coming up very quickly. And so by the time the decision is made, all of the staff that would no longer be needed when we combine a school would miss that window of opportunity, and we would have to hope there are spots left to place them.
Well, we're talking about the duplication staff.
Correct.
With also, granted, the location is not ideal, but with the onlining of an entire new high school, the likelihood that,
So he's already hiring for a lot of those positions right now. The positions have already been posted, and he's been actively hiring. And so our window is shrinking very quickly and with site-based budgeting, we're also limiting positions at other campuses around the district that we're going to have to work to find spaces for. I'm not saying it can't be done, I just want to make sure that we consider all of the consequences that would come with those decisions.
understood. I mean, we're talking about an HCA, we're talking about a principal and an AP, we're talking about a receptionist, maybe a guidance clerk, a guidance counselor,
Secretary.
an IPC, a dean, and then obviously custodial and cafeterial,
Media specialist.
media specialist. Correct.
Art, music, PE.
Can we extend that window?
I mean,
I'm just asking. No, it's not wise.
No, I mean, so, what we ended up with last year, when we made the decision late to change the ratios, is we just had to find places. So again, there may be places, there may not be places within that particular person's job classification that are available. So there may be no secretary positions open. There may be no HCA positions. We don't know until we get there.
Well, and with retirements and transfers to the new high school, and there's a lot in flux right now, so now's the time to have these conversations. I mean, it is, and I know that it's odd and it's awkward and it's all the things, but
It's also going to save us a lot.
this is something that we've been talking about. I don't want the community to think that this is a brand-new conversation and we're just up and deciding to do something that seems so far in left field. We've been having these conversations for upwards of 2 years at least, of something that has to happen on the north side. And I just do not believe that it does not need to happen next year. And that's,
So what I hear from the board is we want the plan as presented to stay the same. What we want to happen is D, which is 76 kids as zoned, to stay at Anthony. And then the other 175 as zoned, determine what goes to Anthony or if it all goes to Reddick. And we want that plan presented to the board. Board, I'm offering March 12th as a special work session. We have agenda review that morning, we'd have to push it back.
March 12th, I will not be present. I will
Okay.
be on a flight.
March
Or
10th, we have a board meeting that night. Is the board available that morning for a work session?
I can be.
Can we just do it
March
March
10th.
11th, that Wednesday?
I can do 11th also. Wednesday, the 11th is fine.
Well, so what I would just offer is, if we did it on the 10th in the morning, if public had comment about it and they couldn't come to the work session during the day, they'd be able to,
March 10th is strategic planning, so that's a lot of our staff on that day, correct?
Almost all of our district
It's a
staff.
difficult day.
okay.
what about extending March 5th?
Oh, I mean, I'm always on board for extending.
Yeah, March 5th will work.
Okay,
The board, we would
I can
need
do-
to extend it past 1:30 though.
yes.
That's fine for me on that day. After that, I can't do, but on March 5th, I don't
Okay.
start teaching yet.
So let's then, what the board would like, that gives you one less week, I was trying to be generous. So, the board would like an updated presentation, which is simply addressing moving D back to Anthony, or keeping D at Anthony, and then addressing the 150 kids at SPAR, 175 kids at SPAR. For a March 5th, which means that work has to be done and uploaded in 1 week from today.
We will make it happen.
And then the community meetings that are happening next week and the week after, move those immediately to the week following spring break. So make that the week of the 16th or 23rd.
Week of 16th is spring break.
It's spring break.
I'm sorry, the 23rd or the 30th, sorry.
We'll follow up with the principals to make sure they have available.
Yes, but sometime in the time frame immediately following spring break, so that by the first week in April, we've concluded our community meetings, and rulemaking and development would happen in a workshop, correct, Mr. Ayers?
session. And rule development is a work session, which is a 14-day.
Can you speak into the microphone?
Rule development is a work session, which is a 14-day notice, and rule development is an actual public hearing with a board meeting, which is a 28-day
Okay.
notification.
And notification with publication of the document? Okay, so,
I'm looking at Elena, I don't believe publication with the document, we have to publish it in the newspaper, correct?
Correct. Are we considering the March 5th, the work session?
not for
No,
rulemaking,
that is not rule development.
That would not be rule development?
correct?
No.
Okay.
Be after spring.
So the workshop that's already scheduled that it would make sense to land on is April 16th.
And usually, again, to quote you, I backwards plan, I work with Elena, and I find out when the board meeting would be, what my 28-day backup from that is, and then where the work session would lie, and the 14-day backup from that to make sure it works. But I'll work with Elena and Dr. Brewer to set those dates.
So if we were to use a already scheduled, I would recommend that we don't do an already scheduled. I think that's pushing too far into April. I think if we can do community meetings in the 2 weeks immediately following spring break, it would be most appropriate to have a workshop the week of April 6th for rulemaking. To give the proper time, because we're gonna work our way into the end of May very quickly, and we also know what our schedules look like as we head into the end of May.
So you're recommending that then we would address it at the board meeting on the 14th, rather than having it on?
No, rulemaking is a workshop. We have to have a workshop. So
I
after the
understand.
community meetings, we have to have a workshop.
Understood, and you don't want to have it on the 16th?
I'm saying I feel like that's a whole week later than it could be, and we're gonna, because 28 days from the rulemaking is the board meeting, and 28 days from the 16th is dang near the last day of school.
And we wouldn't be able to put it on April 2nd if they had the the regularly scheduled work sessions, that's where I'm trying to see. Technically, right now, we have 14 days before April 2nd.
I don't disagree with you. I think that what I would say to Mr. Ayers is, and Mr. Whitehouse is, the community meetings would all have to conclude by April 1st. So that would leave the schools 8 days available post-spring break to have those meetings, which is certainly possible, but
I'll reach
school calendars have to be referenced, et cetera. So, I mean, yes, can we do rulemaking on April 2nd, or is that way too tight? I mean, yes, it's way too tight, so you don't have to answer that question.
So we have to, after the work session for the rulemaking, we've done 14 days for that one, and then the clock essentially starts after that for that 28 days, or can the 28 days be encompassed in the 14 days?
No.
I'm going to defer to either Attorney Powers or Elaine on that one. I don't know if you can, if you have to conclude the rule development before you schedule the rulemaking.
That is correct. The rule development comes first, and that's the,
I know it comes first, but can we schedule it within the 28-day window of notice of rulemaking? So
Essentially, 28 days from today, if we posted something today, 28 days from today, could we have the rulemaking if we also held the rule development 14 days from today?
We would have to have a public
No, I understand the publication piece. I'm saying if there was something that published,
publication, public hearing, you'd have to have a public hearing.
which is what I'm saying is the 28 days from now. But if we were saying today, something ran in the newspaper that said we are having rulemaking and development, 28 days from now, we could have that meeting in the public hearing. And in that 28-day window, we also would have the 14 days.
It may be concurrent. The word I think
Yes.
we're looking to use is concurrent. Can the timelines run concurrently? Or do they have to be subsequent?
Does the work session and the board meeting have to be 14 days apart, or do they have to be 28 days apart? That's really where I am.
As long as they all fall, as long as there's notice of the first one within the time frame that's allowed, you can have them back to back from there on into ad infinitum. So
Okay.
Okay, so I think what we're looking to say then is April 2nd, the work session, we'd like to have rule development. What's the right word, Mr. Ayers?
Rule development.
Rule development.
rule development is the work session.
Okay, so April 2nd, we would have rule development. It's a regularly scheduled work session. That agenda, does it have room to add this item to it?
We'll make it.
Okay. Then, May 12th would be the next regularly scheduled, oh, you're saying not 28
No.
days though, Dr. Campbell. I
No,
hear
I'm
what you're
thinking
saying.
that you can do it
April
on the
14th.
It does have to be on a board meeting night.
Yes.
Yes,
which
yes,
is
yes,
the
April
14th.
14th.
Or the 28th. I mean, if it's more comfortable for everybody that it happens on April 28th, it gives you the entire month of May to make out all the things. I mean, but just trying to keep them on already regularly scheduled dates.
I would just like to add that, and this is not statute, but this is personal practice, of being able to have 2 work sessions before you have the board meeting in case you come to a work session and there needs to be changes. We have to have another work session to discuss those changes and then have the board meeting.
So,
That's not requirement, that's just a personal preference.
so April 28th can be the board meeting date. And so we just need a backwards plan for the 28-day notice. If it's April 28th, we already have a board meeting scheduled on that day.
I want to be clear, you still have to post a notice on a board meeting, and then 28 days later have the hearing.
Yeah, we would post the notice in the 24th board meeting, March 24th.
Yeah, we just do, we schedule a public hearing and vote, which is a
Yes.
consent agenda item.
Right.
And that's just the normal.
And so we would, on the March 24th, which is going to be the week we start the community meetings, we would have a public hearing about scheduling a
Public hearing.
scheduling a public hearing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Attorney Powers?
I appreciate the fact you're looking at me for a response.
It does, but I'm trying to look at calendar
Attorney
dates here,
Powers.
because if it's wrong, we're just gonna have to redo it. I mean, we're gonna,
But that's why we're going to sit here until we make sure it's right. So we're going to be here until we make sure it's right, because if we fumble this, then it's not happening. And the majority of the board has said they want this to happen for the next school year.
Well, as of February 19th, we're definitely a good 28 days away from April 28th. So April 28th would be the board meeting that we would make this final.
I think that date, someone that does this every day, that date, that 28 days is from the
public hearing.
actual,
The notice of public hearing,
the notice of public hearing.
which would be March
Right.
24th.
March 24th board meeting.
you have to post a notice on a board meeting, and then 28 days later have the hearing.
Yes, and we would be 35 days away if we do the notice of public hearing on the 24th.
With the expectation that the actual public hearing will be April 28th.
8th, correct.
And then parent notifications would take place after that.
Within the time
The entire month of May.
Yes, you have the whole month of May.
frame. That
Now-
puts Staff on the clock.
Yeah.
I mean, staff would have to be working overtime,
Oh,
but
yes.
it's within the time frame.
On-
Also, that means that involuntary transfers for those staff members would not be able to occur until after April 28th. So,
On April 2nd work session, the 2 items that we have on there, we have the strategic plan and we have our summer school staffing plan, for your awareness.
okay. And April 2nd would be the rule development for the rezoning. Which typically the thing we argue most about is whether the senior class of the school stays, which that would have no impact on this discussion because there would be no school for them to stay at.
Correct.
So respectfully, I mean, the thing we argue most about is like, do 5th graders stay? Do the 8th graders stay? Do the seniors stay? Whatever.
Siblings get to stay.
And like, none of those things will be
Relevant.
relevant because there would be nowhere to stay.
And Ms. Morant verified that, yes, involuntary transfers would take place after.
Would have
Based
to,
on-
not based on the timeline.
Correct.
Because voluntary transfer window opens when?
Probably respond before I pull the calendar up, unless you know it off the top.
Yes, Ms. Morant, since you're watching.
Yes.
When does voluntary transfer window begin? I know that,
So I think it's right after spring break because all of our documentation, HR is due back before spring break. So I think the plan was to open all that up right after.
Pulling it up.
open up voluntary transfer.
Correct.
And that voluntary transfer is done for non-instructional and instructional at the same time?
Correct.
The involuntary transfer for displaced instructional employees is March 23rd through March 27th.
Okay.
Did you want another date?
No, essentially what this will mean is if it gets through rulemaking and development in the public hearing and it's voted on April 28th, the staff that are affected would be then offered whatever is left.
Yes, for those that are still there, so.
Obviously, all of the instructional units are going with.
Yeah, the instructional units would be.
Follow the
them would be
kids.
moving to Reddick, for sure.
Well, and Anthony,
Yeah, sure.
correct? I mean, teachers follow kids. That's essentially what happens.
Well, so they would have the option to. We don't
Sure.
force them to follow the location. They have the opportunity to pick from other locations.
What I mean is the position. The
Yes.
teaching, there's no neutralization of teaching positions because the kids still exist. Same for para positions, same for the kindergarten paras, same for the instructional paraprofessionals. The ESE units may change locations, but the ESE units are still gonna exist because the students that are in those units are still there. So all of those pieces are consistent. So what we're talking, and obviously, we're gonna add theoretically custodians to Reddick because Reddick's now gonna have twice as many rooms to clean, right? So I would,
Based on square footage, and the square footage isn't changing in the campus. We still clean Building 10 because Dr. Manning still uses those rooms.
okay, that's a conversation for another time.
Are we still cleaning the downtown district office?
Not the vacated property, but the ancillary property that's around it, where we still have staff members located.
Sure, understand, but I mean,
The whole board.
That's a conversation.
Well, I mean, it's,
We're gonna, Dr.
you
Campbell,
said-
Dr. Campbell, we're gonna agree to talk about that on. a
that's
different
gonna
day.
be another conversation for another day.
Anyhow, let's stay focused.
So many questions.
So, let's recap, shall we? The community meetings that are supposed to starting next Thursday, notification's gonna go out that they are going to be rescheduled. In a perfect world, we will confirm those dates before we notify of rescheduling, right?
Correct.
So that we're not communicating twice, we're just gonna say, this meeting that was originally scheduled for April 26th is now, or February 26th is now gonna be scheduled for March, whatever, right? Do we all agree that that would be the ideal scenario?
Best, less confusing.
Then on March 5th, we're going to have a work session where we're going to discuss an update to the plan that's been presented. That would include the rest of the students at SPAR finding a different place to go, Reddick or Anthony. Outside of that, nothing else is changing from the plan that's been presented. Does everyone agree with that? Reverend Cummings, you're on board with that? Okay. So we're not touching Fessenden. The Ocala Springs kids are still coming up. The auxiliary zones are still happening. All of that is still happening. Okay. Then we're going to, on the 24th, on the 23rd, the week of the 23rd, start the community meetings. And on the 24th, we will have a notification of public hearing.
And to be clear, the rule development has to occur before the ads are run, otherwise we're wasting money on legal ads, so. The
Rule development is occurring on March 5th.
No, I think that day is April the 2nd. And that would take place after the rescheduled community meetings.
Correct. March 5th, you're going to bring us back the new plan.
Yes.
Then you're having the community meetings, and on April 2nd, we're having the rule development. What did you just say, Attorney Powers?
The rule development has to occur before the ads are run, otherwise we're just wasting money on the legal ads. So the rule development has to conclude before the ads are.
Which ads? Be very specific, please.
The ads for.
The 28-day ad?
28-day, yeah.
Okay, so that's contrary to what I asked, because I asked if we said today that we were having a 28-day window, and we could still get rule development done in 28 days from today, if today the ad ran. But you're saying that we have to hold the April 2nd date and then can't run the ad for the public hearing of the actual event until,
No, we just have to ensure that the rule development is complete before we run the,
That's, yes, what she just said is what you're saying.
okay.
So, does it have to be a regularly scheduled board meeting?
Yes, but technically.
Yes or no?
It,
No,
we're really struggling here. So if we have to have April 2nd as the work session for
For the rule development,
Elena has,
March 5th, there's no work session, them bringing them back. It would be April 2nd, and that work session is equivalent to the rule development.
oh, correct. March 5th is them coming forward with the updated plan saying, board, are you all in agreement with the way we're going to sparse the SPAR kids out?
right.
Okay, so what are they bringing back on April 2nd?
April 2nd is the rule development. Basically, that's the one where we talk about who goes and who stays, except it's not going to be anyone going or staying because there won't be much rule development because the rule is just the rule.
We just don't, we're not 14 days, we can't make March 5th be the 14-day window for the rule development.
During the rule development work session, we'll formalize the plan at the prior work session, but that work session, you'll have the community feedback, you'll have the results from the meetings, the community
Yes.
meetings, the final plan will be, and then you'll also
Yes.
come to consensus on the particulars. Who
And the
stays
only
with it.
date that we can do that in a regularly scheduled workshop to allow for community meetings is April 2nd. What I hear Attorney Power saying is we cannot do the public, notice of public hearing for a rulemaking and the public hearing for the zoning until the conclusion of the workshop where we do rulemaking. Is that correct?
April 2nd will be rule development, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
So you will need to run the 14-day notice for that date.
correct.
The notice of hearing for rulemaking would be then March 24th. Rulemaking hearing date would be 28 days' notice. That'd be April 28th.
Right. So Ms. Martinez just has to run that one on March 27th then.
March 27th? For the,
If we're doing an April 28th,
yes, correct.
then March 27th is the date for the rule making, and the rule development is the 20th.
Yes, but I'm sorry, I thought what I heard Mr. Ayers say, and the way I remember this, is we have to have in a public board meeting, we have notification of a public hearing, and we do this whole, there's a whole script for it.
Yes,
And that has to happen in a public meeting.
yes.
That has to be 28 days minimum prior to the meeting in which we have the public hearing,
Which is March 24th.
which is,
Correct me if I'm wrong, and Elena, the board meeting where we schedule the thing, that's an actual board meeting, does that have to be 28 days before the thing? Or that's just a consent item where we schedule it on a public notice? The actual board meeting where the public hearing and vote occurs, that's the 28-day notice one.
That is correct. I think we're going a little off script here. The work session has to be, the ad that goes in for rule development reflects the work session date. So if he's bringing it back to us on March 5th,
that's not the rule
No.
development date,
No.
though.
The rule development work session is the beginning of April,
April 2nd.
April
so
2nd.
we're just going to have, so that one is just not going to have anything to do with the rule development, we're just bringing it back on April 2nd.
Correct.
No,
It's rule making.
March 5th has nothing to do with rulemaking and rule development. The April 2nd one would count as the rule development work session.
So then,
And that's the way that we do it with our policies, for example. We'll set out 4 or 5, or up to 3 work sessions that we announce the first one. We announce all 3 in case we need those additionals. So,
So what I'm
Saying
looking,
is
so
correct.
that I just feel like I've heard a variety of narratives, not only from Attorney Powers, but just in our discourse. What I heard you say, Attorney Powers, was that we cannot have a meeting to acknowledge the public hearing date until after the conclusion of the rule development on April 2nd. Is that an accurate statement?
I think it's an accurate statement. I heard that, but I don't think that's an accurate statement.
repeat your question, please.
What I have heard you say is that we cannot have a meeting where we announce the notification for a public hearing on rezoning until the conclusion of rule development, which is April 2nd.
We can announce the public hearing. It's when we have the public hearing. April 2nd will be rule development, correct?
Yes,
Okay, April 2nd is rule development, so you need to run the 14-day notice for that date. Okay?
yes,
Then notice of hearing of rulemaking, then March 24th, and rulemaking hearing date would be 28th after that, so April 28th.
Okay,
That's the recap.
sounds good. Okay, I'm in agreement with that. I heard things that were not aligned to that, so I'm confirming that we were all on the same page. So, Hopefully, the principals will be able to provide an alternative date after spring break, which will then allow us to provide notification to the communities to say, we're no longer gonna have the meeting next Thursday, but instead we're gonna have it on whatever date at the end of March, so that we can have more accurate information. Does that sound conclusive? Team? Yes? Okay. Staff, anything else? All right, any public comment on this item? Okay,
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, thank you both.
let me get to my page in the script. Going into meeting reminders, a special school board leasing meeting is scheduled for February 24th at 5 p.m., followed by a school board meeting at 5:30. And the next administrative briefing and work session, which we've talked ad nauseum about, is March 5th, where we will discuss this item again. Moving into board comments, Ms. Martinez-Young,
Nothing, Madam Chair, thank you.
thank you for your insight on publication today. Dr. Brewer,
Nothing additional.
thank you. Attorney Powers.
Two things. First, I was contacted regarding a possible complementary, compatible use of one of our properties, a property near Anthony Elementary, which is 2.25 acre parcel. There is a dental clinic that is interested in the purchase of that property. It is compliant with the mission of School Board of Marion County. Specifically, it's a dental clinic for individuals with profound or severe disabilities. That parcel near Anthony Elementary, they're interested in purchasing, not leasing, because of the infrastructure requirements on it. They'd have to actually build out a clinic. They would start out, however, with portables, is what they've indicated to me. If the board is interested in doing so, rather than putting it out for bid, it's a property that we can directly sell. Then we can have facilities run an appraisal, get it valued, and then go through offer acceptance, go through that process, and have facilities spearhead that. Then at that point, I would pick up with a contract and get a contract prepared in order to, and of course, run the title work. Facilities would need to do disclosure and discussion with them of whatever terms, but most likely it'd be just an outright sale, which is in many cases somewhat easier than a lease arrangement. So what I would need to do is get a consensus from the board as to whether that is, and it doesn't have to happen today, we can discuss it further, but as to whether that is something the board is interested in, or whether the board wants to have some other way of listing individual parcels. This parcel came to Ms. Usher's attention as a result of the fact that it was on a list of properties that we were not currently using, that were ones which were potentially available. So I believe the board chair also knows a little bit more about this.
Yes, well, and can you speak to why we don't have to do a bid process for the sale?
We never do, almost never. So, I mean, if it's an outright property, we can sell property outright. We don't have to,
Why did we do it for the warehouse?
Because we chose to.
because we chose to, yeah.
Because it was prominent property, so.
Okay. So Flost approached me. They're a nonprofit that does, there's essentially nowhere for profound disabled adults to go for dental work. Flost is a nonprofit that, essentially, it's a retired dentist. There's a group of them, there's 3 or 4 of them across the state. They're putting locations kind of strategically across the state, and they essentially use anesthesia to put adult disabled individuals to sleep so that they can do all kinds of work in their mouth. And they originally were looking at the building, which I didn't even know we owned, which is the health department occupies behind the old Reddick High School, which I didn't even know we owned that. But we do, the health department leases it. But they would want to take over the building, and just the way God works, this fell into my lap as a conversation almost immediately following when we had staff, because the only reason staff have that list is because we asked them, it was brought to us, right? We had asked for, what do we own? And so this came almost immediately following that workshop where we were briefed on all the things we own and kind of went through what we would be willing to sell, what we wouldn't be willing to sell. So when the Reddick property didn't make sense, I was like, well, we did just talk about this and we do have this thing in Anthony. And so that's kind of how this has occurred. And so obviously they have lots of stuff to do if they're going to be willing to put a clinic there, but I do think that there's certainly a need in our community, and they appear to be willing to do. Obviously, they have to go through P&Z and do all kinds of stuff, so I'm sure all of that would be contingent on the sale. There'd have to be zoning changes or use changes, I would imagine, for the, it's health, medical, which is not what we are. So, I mean, I'm no expert in that, but I would imagine there's going to be some level of conversation they'll have to have with the county commission. But ultimately, we just need to decide, do we want to move forward with an appraisal to figure out what the property's worth?
I'm interested in the conversation.
Okay. Do we want staff to just do the appraisal? Because we kind of asked for an appraisal of everything anyways. And so this would just be kind of expediting the appraisal on this parcel to see what it's worth and then figuring out, essentially, are they willing to pay for it? Okay. Okay. Looks like you have a go-ahead. And then I believe we have a request for an attorney-client session.
That is correct. Board members, I'm notifying you that Attorney Suzanne Green has informed me that advice is needed regarding case number 24 CA 977. It's Lawrence Gilbert and Betty Gilbert versus School Board of Marion County. Pursuant to 286.011 Florida statute, the Government Sunshine Act, on behalf of Attorney Green, I'm requesting an attorney-client session with the board for the purpose of discussing the evaluation and/or compromise of said matter. I've asked the board's clerk to cause reasonable public notice of the time and date of the attorney-client session and the names of the persons attending to be published. It's suggested the attorney-client session be held beginning at 9:02 a.m. during a recess of the March 5th, 2026 administrative briefing and work session scheduled, or as soon thereafter as may be heard. As required by the statute, only the following individuals will be present: Lori Conrad, Eric Cummings, Dr. Allison Campbell, Nancy Thrower, Dr. Sarah James, Dr. Danielle Brewer, Danielle Blackman, staff attorney, Jeremy Powers, school board attorney, and Suzanne Green, or the designee of the DGH legal law firm. I've asked a court reporter to record the session as required by statute. Her notes will be fully transcribed and filed with the board clerk. Upon the conclusion of any litigation or settlement of all claims arising out of the matter, the transcript will be made public record.
All right, I recommend the board hold an attorney-client session pursuant to section 286.011 Florida statute to discuss the pending matter. If there are no objections, the attorney-client session should occur during a recess of the March 5th, 2026 administrative briefing and work session starting at 9:02 a.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard. All right, any further comments, Attorney Powers?
None, thank you.
All right, Reverend Cummings. Dr. Campbell.
I think I'm good today.
Okay, Board Member Conrad.
I just wanted a quick congratulations to Mr. Christian. We celebrated, he was, what were you nominated, Kevin? Community Member of the Month, is that correct? And so he was recognized as the most recent city council meeting. And so just, we get to enjoy your expertise all the time. So it was nice to see you recognized at the city. So I just wanted to say thank you for the work that you do for us each and every day.
Okay, and I will conclude. I appreciate the spirited conversation today. I know that this has felt like a one big game of, what is it, table tennis?
Cat and mouse.
Whack-a-mole. It has felt, for the last 3.5 years as a board member, it's been a conversation that we've been having. And over the course of the 3.5 years, we have successfully irritated a variety of communities as we've had these open dialogues and conversation. One of the things that Dr. Campbell always says is, this is the only opportunity that we are able to have open discourse as a board. And so whether it's Fordham, Madison Street, Fesden, Anthony, Spar, to name a few, this is the opportunity the board has to talk about it, because we don't talk about it outside of this. It's a violation of sunshine. And so it is frustrating for staff. I acknowledge that and hear that. And I wish there was a more productive way of work that would allow us to not have to do it this way. But I ultimately think that we were elected to make these decisions, and I mean, it's one of the responsibilities that we hold. We are ultimately the ones that have to rezone. We're the ones that have to sign the checks, and so we are where we are. I am grateful that we're going to have community meetings that are more informed based on the discourse from today. I think that is the most productive approach, and we will get over through the next 3.5 months. We always do, and we'll figure out where we land. So I will conclude my comments for today with that, and we will adjourn our meeting, our workshop at 11:28. Thank you.